Hello, and today we're going to continue in our series of PHP from a designer's perspective, and today we're going to talk about functions, another really useful thing you're going to need to know in your PHP. In this series, I'm not teaching you anything that you don't need to know because I'm a self-confessed not a PHP guy. I'm not a developer. I want to be, which is part of the reason why I'm doing these tutorials. But I'm not a developer, but I've learnt quite a lot. So in this series, I'm only showing you things you need to know. But anyway, you already knew that because this is I haven't put any of these videos out yet. But by the time you're seeing this video, I'm going to upload all the PHP tutorials pretty much in one go. So we're just going to dive in today, and we're going to talk about a PHP thing called functions. I'm going to show you where they come into play with a simple document that I wrote. We've got a PHP statement, we've got a comment, we've got a connection variable, which I told you about variables in previous tutorials. These are really important. It connects to a database server using these credentials, and it selects the database with this function and sticks it in the DB name variable. Now, as you might have known, I just showed you some pre-chosen functions, and you'll have used pre-chosen functions before, like this MySQL connect thing is a function, and we'll show you how that comes into play. But I'm just going to add a little bit here just so I can show you something. When I add another line of code, it says close DB connection. And I'm not going to stick it into a variable because it doesn't need to store any data. You don't really need to know what this means, but I'm just going to say MySQL and just got to close. So that the connection closes each time the thing runs. Now, so you just added an extra line of code. What if several times in a document we needed to keep opening and closing the connection? Now, or if we wanted to reference it from another file, at the moment we'd have to copy the code, paste it somewhere down here, or even in another file, paste it wherever we want it to, and that's just monotonous. It makes your code dirty, and it makes it difficult for the server to follow and difficult for you to read. What we need is a one line of code that will help you execute all the above code or whatever code you want. So this is for when you want to execute a block of code that you're going to want to reference multiple times, or we use something called a function, which we can use by calling just one line. You'll notice that these are all functions, and our function will take the same format. So let me just show you. First, what we need to do is make a function. These are predefined functions, because we need to actually tell it what code we want to execute in the function. So we're just going to say db functions, just to keep our code clean. What we're going to prefix it with is, oddly enough, the word function. Then we're going to tell it what we want to call. So what we want to call our function, i.e. how we want to call it in the code. So let me just give you an example. You have to make sure it's not already in use by PHP, otherwise it won't work. But I could just use the function name db stuff, because I know that's not already used by PHP. Then what I do is I put my parameters, and this houses extra stuff, and then I put my opening curly braces just like you would in CSS, and then inside all there I put my stuff that I want for the function, so it will be all that code. And now just put a thing there to say it's the end of our function. To call that function and to call all that stuff that we just wrote somewhere else in our file, we only have to write out one line there. We have to call the db stuff function, or whatever you name your function, whatever it's doing, and all we have to do is write somewhere in our PHP db stuff, and then 2 brackets, and then the code that's inside that function that we defined, db stuff, the code that's inside there will execute when the code reaches down to that call. So it makes your code a lot cleaner, because we've just referenced all that code, all that paragraph code, and executed all that code in one line or a function. So a lot of people, that what they'll do on WordPress does this is, you have a functions.php file, and then that just gets included on all the pages so that you can call the functions without having to see them. So it's a structural thing, really. It keeps your code organised, and it's really important. So anyway, this was a tutorial on functions, and I hope you learned something. Start using functions.